Top of the morning to you laddies, my name is... no, I'm not Japsepticeye. Ha, I got you. You thought I was Jacksepticeye, the famous YouTuber. Or the more famous YouTuber, Jacksepticeye 2, the sequel. But no, it is I, Project Feline, again with another Project Feline, Devstream, doing more stuff. Does my camera look stuttery? Something looks kind of weird. I don't know what's going on. I think I have it left on autofocus. Come on, Ray. Get it together, man. Set your camera settings before you go live, you dingus. Let me just turn off auto exposure to make it a little less choppy. There we go, that's a much smoother now. That's epic. And I might just, so it's not too bright for you. For you lot that stay indoors and watch live streams all day. There we go, cool. So welcome back. I just thought I'd do a quick stream today. We're not gonna go too long because I'm a bit time sensitive at the moment. I've got about an hour, but I thought I'd just show you what's going on, what I'm doing, where I've been, and I think that's a little too dark. Hold on. God damn it. Where's my that's a little too... Can I like brighten that a little? That's a bit better. Cool. So I'm gonna show you what I've been working on. It's just, you know, it's been like it's been one of those weeks. It's just, or maybe 2 weeks, I don't know when I last streamed. But since then I've just been kind of stuck on stuff. And I thought I'd show you some progress I've been making. It's sort of like the day-to-day programming type stuff. Considering that I hadn't done any programming for like 6 months before I started tackling this, I'd say I'm doing alright. Because I'm not really like, I wouldn't call myself a programmer. I just kind of learn it because I have to learn it. But yeah, as far as like everything else, you know, I just kind of, you know, I just learn what I need to learn to get the game done, really. So I know I'm not doing everything perfectly, but it's getting there. It's getting there. But I'm running into some roadblocks. Firstly, I want to show you something I'm really proud of. Oh, actually, before we begin, I have a new housekeeping rule. All right, so I want you to pay attention to it moves depending on which thing I turn on here, but there's a bit of text in yellow because I made it yellow because you dopamine internet people only pay attention to yellow and bright colors. I've got a bit of yellow text on the screen. I'm gonna have to change the rules a little bit with Q&A question stuff because last 2 streams I've had, because the viewership here is a lot bigger than on Twitch, so there's a lot more people coming in and asking me like very specific questions and advice. And while I'd love to do that, it does break up the flow of the stream a lot because I do have work I have to do. And I find that, you know, when the stream's over, it's like, oh, you know, I answered like 5 questions that, you know, I hope helps people, but I got nothing done. So I've made a new rule. If you do want to ask a specific question, like game dev related question or anything like that, leave a super chat of any amount. I don't care how much, just like something. That way it kind of, I can like give you a sort of, I can like justify like, okay, I can take out a minute because I'm getting paid to, so that's kind of nice, you know? So it's just sort of like a tip jar, I guess. Because now that the Screen Australia thing hasn't gone through, I don't have an abundant funding pool at the moment. So if you help me out, I help you out. That's the new rule. Otherwise, like there's gonna be like 50 people all asking questions and I have to stop for each one. And it's just, you know, it kind of breaks things up. So that's the new change to the stream. But apart from that, that's all that's different, really. I just thought I'd bring that up because I was getting asked so many questions last time, and while I want to get around to them all, you know, I'm gonna die someday. I don't have infinite time on the planet, sadly, so I want to make sure that gets respected, but also, you know, have it so that people can ask me stuff. So it's kind of, yeah, it's you scratch my back, I scratch yours sort of thing. That's the system now. You got a game dev question? Well, that isn't a game dev question. That's just a question, dude. I don't know who Joe is. Don't say Joe. Do not say Joe Mama. Anyway, so let me show you something. This picture was from, yeah, here we actually, even in this one, there's this long question here from someone that I'm not sure if I got around to getting. This is a screenshot from last stream. So anyway, so in this screenshot, I have a blueprint open, and this is a blueprint for this mission system I've been working on for a while. And for a bit of backstory, so last year in my Screen Australia video, I showed this off, and I think most of you watching have probably seen it now because it's like my second most popular video, which is it's kind of funny, I guess. I I don't really want to particularly be known as the guy who picked a fight with Screen Australia, but yeah, a lot of people seem to be looking through that video. But in that video, I talk about this mission system, and I mentioned I was having a lot of trouble with it because of the way I was trying to build it. So things have kind of changed since then. I've still been working on it because I started working on it like a year ago, and it hasn't been that I've been working on it for a whole year. I started on it a year ago, and then a bunch of other stuff came up, and then I started working on other stuff. And now finally, after like almost a year, I'm coming back to finish it. So it isn't that the system took a year, it's just that a lot of stuff was going on, but I'm finally now back to it. But it's really flawed. It's so broken, and I still haven't figured out an exact solution to what I showed in that video, where like the missions would act differently depending on which order the blueprints were compiled in. So I've tried to do some things to mitigate that problem a little bit. I'm still having some issues, but I think things are getting a lot better. And there's a video I want to point out, and then there's the stuff I want to show here. So in this is a screenshot of the old one from last week or 2 weeks ago, of how a metric would work. Now, for those who don't know, in my system, a metric is just a number that's on the screen. I can actually show you what a metric is real quick. Just to catch everyone up. And you guys are going to be my rubber duck today. That's kind of why I'm streaming. I need a rubber duck because I'm really stuck with this thing and I need to explain it to someone. So you guys are going to be that someone I explain this to. So you see in the top corner, I know I've got the nice HUD parallaxing now. That's something I'm really proud of. I've actually got some animations on it too. So when I add score, and you'll notice that this doesn't work all the time, and that's the thing we're going to be getting into. But if I defeat enemies, the score goes up. If I collect cogs, the cog counter is supposed to go up, and the watch is now completely broken. So that middle number with the 0 is supposed to be a stopwatch, and that... Okay, I'll explain why that's broken later. That's complicated, all right? But for the moment, metrics are just numbers like this, where you can track things. I've sort of taken it to a very abstract level, maybe too abstract, but I'm doing it this way for a reason. Because what I want to have in the game, I'm going to tell you my vision, okay? This is what I see happening. We're going to have linear missions. I'm not sure how many of you know that now, but after the Screen Australia video, internally, we decided linear missions primarily now is going to be our focus because, yeah, a lot of reasons for that. I'm going to go into that in a devlog at some point. So let me show you, like, Skyport, kind of like that, except better, is kind of what we're focusing on at the moment. My designer, I renewed his contract recently. He's doing a bit more work for me now, which is great. He's working on an all new level right now. I can't show it to you yet though, because it's on a different branch and it would take my Australian internet like 2 hours to download his changes. And for some reason, the input is not working. Unreal is not taking my input. Oh, well, that's a lot of errors. Yeah, so yeah, this has kind of been me like the whole week. I just go, oh, what's going on? And then a bunch of errors come up. But anyway, so metrics, okay, metrics. I feel like I'm Walt explaining this to Jesse. It's like, Jesse, what? Metrics, Jesse. We need to make metrics. So these metrics just track things. Now, the idea is in normal missions, like a Skyport, for instance, I've now decided there's going to be a few things that a normal mission will track. It'll track score, and that score gets incremented when you defeat enemies or obstacles. So maybe if you destroy a crate or kill a turret or something, you'll get points, and that factors into your rank. So last stream, we were working on the results screen, which I haven't really done much to since then, because I was trying to do that last stream with the results screen and make it nice, but then I think what happened was I started encountering issues with the way metrics worked. So what I've done, I've had to essentially completely redo the whole metrics system. Not entirely, but I've refactored a lot of it. And I'll show you, this is what this screenshot is. So this screenshot is of what's called an event counter, which essentially is just an integer, and it can be incremented and decremented. Is that how you pronounce? I don't know how you pronounce decremented. It can be set up and down. It can be saved and loaded. And the reason why all that's important, and the reason why there's so many nodes, because you might say, Ray, it's just an integer. Why is there so many complicated nodes happening? There's a reason for that. So one of those metrics on screen, like time or score, is just a number, but those numbers are all tracking different things. But they all have things in common, and that's how they track things. The way that they behave is the same. They just output different numbers. So what I mean by that is when you are playing the game, and let's say you reach a checkpoint, like let's say you collect a cog and then kill an enemy and then reach a checkpoint and then you die. I don't know if this will actually work, but let's try it. Okay, that didn't work. It was supposed to reset my score, but what's supposed to happen is metrics can be saved and loaded when checkpoints are hit and when you die. So each of these numbers, they track different things, but one thing they both have in common is they can know when the player has respawned. They can hook into the player's health and go, has this player died and have we respawned? And it can trigger an event to happen when that happens and say, oh, okay, the player's died. Let's load our value. So for example, if I collected 10 cogs and then died, and you respawn, it can go, oh, you've died. We're going to set the cogs back to 0. Or if it's the time, you might have it so that the time saves when you reach a checkpoint. So you could reach a checkpoint, it goes, oh, okay, you've been here for 2 minutes. That was your elapsed time when you touched the checkpoint. Then a minute later, you die. When you respawn, it'll go back to the value of like, okay, you were at 2 minutes when you touched this checkpoint. We'll restore it back to 2 minutes. And there's a lot of more things like that too, like the metrics activating and deactivating when in certain conditions. And yeah, there's a lot of things they have in common. Another thing that they can also do is that they're all self-contained, which is why this blueprint is so complicated, or this one that I showed. You can actually put these on more than a mission. So if you wanted, you could use this as like an interaction system. So you could have it, you could attach this component, because this is what it's all made of. It's made of actor components. You can take this component and put it on like a gate, for example, which I think that's what I've done with this gate. This has an event counter on it. And you can say, hey, when I touch this switch, cast to the component, the event counter here, and increment it by 1. And then you can program the gate to go, oh, when the event count is 1, open the door. And you can configure it as well to require, so you can have like 2 switches that are both bound to the gate, and have it so that both of the switches need to be triggered for the gate to open. So you can have it so that this one will increment the number, and this one will increment the number, and then the end counter, or the event counter, will go, okay, the value has now reached 2, and at 2 we will then open the gate, or something like that. So it's the complicated thing is that it's very broad with how you can use it, and that's by design, but it also creates lots of bugs, which is what I've been kind of dealing with lately. And I understand that there's probably a lot I'm not doing right, and I'm not going to be able to get it perfect, because you guys got to keep in mind that I'm not a full-time programmer. I do everything on the game, so I have to divide my time very carefully. So I don't necessarily, I can't afford the time to like redo this in C++. Not that that would really make a difference. Like, there'll still be bugs with it, but a lot of this is more. It isn't, because I was seeing a lot of debate last stream about blueprints versus C++. That seems to happen a lot now. Every time I stream, everyone gets into an argument about it, and that's not really the issue. It's just me. Like, I'm the problem. It's just that I'm still figuring out what my code's trying to do. It isn't because it's blueprints. If you had someone that knew exactly how to code this system, they could do it in blueprints and it would work bug-free. But I'm not university educated. I don't have a degree in this stuff. I literally learnt programming from YouTube when I was 10. So just keep that in mind. That's my background. I'm a lot more confident with my 3D art and stuff like that. And I only learned programming because I had to make the game. So just keep that in mind. But considering that, I think I've done pretty good, like, for the whole game so far. The fact I've got wall run physics and all that stuff, I technically should not be able to do that at all, but I got it working. So I have hope that I can get this to work if I just keep going. So let's get more into specifics now, because that's the backstory on this whole thing. What I've been doing lately, I mentioned that I kind of refactored all of this. To go back to this screenshot, This was one metric, because the thing, I had this weird problem where I was trying to use actor components and trying to use inheritance, because as I mentioned, all of those things have things in common. Like they can be loaded and saved and reset, and they can spawn widgets too. That's another thing I neglected to mention. All of these shared traits, like they can spawn widgets on the screen that are formatted a certain way. And they all track different things, but they all act the same way. You know, they can all be treated the same way. That's the whole idea. And you might, you'd hear that and you go, oh, well, yeah, inheritance sounds perfect, right? But I tried doing that in my video with the Screen Australia video, and it didn't work. It was acting so strange. Like when I would make a child component and attach more than one of them to an actor, the whole thing would just completely break. But then last stream, I was sent a video. Someone sent this to me, and I'm gonna like show it real quick. And it's a bit of a weird I'm just gonna tell the story of like how I got to what I'm on at the moment. But he sent me this video about non-destructive work, and it's part of some tutorial series by Deep Fried Oreo, and he kind of explains what I'm trying to do, kind of. Sorry, my internet is really slow, so I don't know if it's going to actually show any of these frames. But he basically explains how you can use actor components the way I'm trying to use them to essentially create self-contained logic that is reusable. Because I don't know what it is, but I'm really attracted to that idea of making logic. I guess that's kind of what composition is. Now, I'm no programmer, but my understanding is composition is like it's a different thing from inheritance, but it's supposed to kind of describe this self-contained behavior type stuff. But let's not get into that. It's going to be complicated. But essentially, this video, he sent it to me saying, this might fix your problem. Now, weirdly enough, it didn't, but it kind of did at the same time, and I'll explain what I noticed. Because all this was the thing this guy was doing was exactly what I was already doing, and I was still having issues. But there was one difference, and I think you can maybe see it in this picture that this guy was doing that I wasn't doing. And I just had it. The difference is that on this is a screenshot of my blueprint from last, and I know it's kind of small. I don't know if I can zoom in. Yeah, so you'll see on my one, the way that my system works is that it's all custom events and event dispatches. So if I have a bit of logic that says, spawn a widget on screen and assign its value to be the metric value and update and save it and everything. I was doing those with custom events, and then I would call event dispatches that were bound to those events, and I would call those from other blueprints. And I really like event dispatches, but nothing was working. When I tried to bind an event, and if I had like two components that were similar, like not even similar, if I just had two components of any kind, because I mentioned earlier, inheritance did not work. So what I ended up doing, the reason why this one was so big, this is just the int counter, the event counter, is that what I did was I copy pasted the metric code for each different type of metric. So I had a watch, an event counter, a score counter, and a few others. Like more specific ones, and instead of all inheriting from a class, I would just copy it and just change bits of it. So last stream at the end, if you guys were there for it, you saw me painstaking because I had to change something about how the metrics worked, and because they weren't children of each other, I had to go through this specific section. This is a video from the last stream. I had to go through every single thing and change a few nodes like 15 times for each different metric because they were all separate objects. And when I got off stream, I got off and I was like, this is so stupid. Like, I hate this. And I thought, could I bring back inheritance somehow? Because that would just make the work so much easier. And I was watching this guy's video, and I noticed one difference that he had with my thing, is that instead of using custom events, he was using functions. And now, I've never really understood the whole difference between I know that there are some differences between event dispatches and functions, but I've never understood the best use case or the best practices, right? Because that isn't explained too well. I've actually tried researching it a lot, and if you search when should I use functions or event dispatches, everyone just says, oh, well, functions can have outputs and events can't, and events can be replicated. And it's like, yeah, that's great, but it doesn't tell me like, when should I use these? I know that they can do things that are slightly different, but by default, in any just a normal situation that doesn't rely on outputs or networking, what should I do? And I haven't found any good information about it online. But I was looking at this guy's stuff and I was like, wow, this guy uses like no event dispatchers. He uses like functions for everything. And I thought maybe I should try that, because who knows? Because I'm looking at how he coded this in the video and it worked. The system he was making worked. And I was like, oh, maybe I should try that. So I gave that a shot, and I've got a completely new base class, and I've now got it all inherited now. So this is how the new base class, and I know this looks still pretty big, but you'll see that most of this is just filler and doesn't do anything. All of this is just empty, because I still have event dispatchers, but I'm using them completely differently now. So this is the base metric, and this is like the base class for those numbers that are on the screen, like the score and time and cogs and whatever else I want. This is the base class that tracks things like that. And this is really, this part right here is essentially it. The rest of this is just binding the events, which is just tedious, like repetitive, like it's not really complicated. And then all of this is just like empty slots for when you mission events, which I have mostly not put anything there for most of them. I don't even have to have them here, but I just want them there in case I think, oh, you know, maybe I want something to happen when the player respawns, and I'll add something. But so I've just left a lot of these here to remind myself that you can do this stuff, but most of this is completely blank. And then there's this one little custom event at the bottom that just sets the widget visibility and stuff. But the essential logic on the event graph is just this, and everything else is in functions now. So if I zoom in, it's all made in functions, and these functions are all kind of pretty simple. You know, it's like set, you know, whether like some of these kind of have a bit more stuff going on, but it's all done in functions, and it's a lot more organized. And, you know, I still don't know if it's like the right way, because I don't know if that's going to have some kind of drawback later, but it has helped. It has sort of fixed a few things. I've now broken more things for other reasons, but we'll get to that in a bit. The main thing is that now if I open that, because I had that screenshot, if I go back a little, I can zoom out. So that's the child. It's supposed to be a child, but it isn't in this old screenshot. But if I open that, the current version of that, it's gonna blow your mind. Let me just try and find it. Oh, sorry, I had my chat window minimized. What drivers? Just the NVIDIA Studio drivers. I have an NVIDIA graphics card. Thanks, Playboy. So yeah, by the way, if any of this sounds confusing, I know, I need to explain it. You guys are the rubber duck. I need to explain it because I'm stuck with this, and you're about to see why. But I appreciate you being my rubber duck. It's a huge help. So let's oh, there's more. God, yeah, there's been a lot of... This is the thing, is that visually, it actually looks worse. It looks like I've made negative progress because everything's broken. But under the hood, it's all completely... There's actually been a lot going on. It's just very, like, back-end type stuff, so it doesn't look spectacular. But this will look spectacular if I can find it. I'm just trying to find the component. There's a specific component I want to show you. So if I go to metric component int, this is the child class. This is it. Okay, this is like the thing that keeps track of integer values. So it's a metric that has all those shared behaviors, but this one is specifically designed for integers. So this is what handles the cog counter, like how many cogs you've collected, and the score counter. And the thing is about those is that those two numbers are different numbers. They track different things, but because they're both integers, they behave the same way. They just get triggered at different events, but they're essentially the same component. So that's the thing, right? So instead of making a whole new class where I had to copy and paste all the stuff from the parent, like last time, this is it now. It's just that. Isn't that cool? I think that's freaking awesome. Look how simple it is, because it inherits everything from yeah, now it has this little thing where it has parent class metric. So all of the complicated stuff is in the other blueprint, and it's handled all there. And this will have a few, and this is where the whole functions things actually comes into play. So there's only a few differences. So it's just got, yeah, even this is empty. This is just an empty event dispatcher that I can use for its children later. and it literally just sets a value, and that's it. That's all the difference. And then that has a few function overrides. So because I've made all of these functions in the base class, let me find it. So in the base metric class, if I go to like, you know, set value or whatever, like save metric. Here's a great example. So this is the parent class of how any metric will work like this. You can save it. So when you call that function, it checks whether or not it has been given the ability to save. And, you know, some of them I might want them not saving, for instance. Like, for example, when you die, I don't want you to get all your cogs back. I want you to go back to 0 cogs. So for the cog counter, I'll turn off can save, and it won't save it. And it'll load back from 0 when it's loaded. But when you can save it, it calls this function called set value. Then it calls a dispatcher, and this is the key difference. I'm actually using the dispatchers different. I'm still using dispatchers, but instead of calling events by the dispatcher, I'm calling the function which has the dispatcher in it somewhere. And I don't know exactly if that's correct, but it's just made it easier. And there's a few reasons I've noticed where it's like when you're working with any default Unreal class, whenever you want to do something to it, it's always a function. It's never an event dispatcher. And I'm like, I wonder why that is. So I've changed mine to work similar, and I guess it's working out all right as far as this specific logic is concerned. If we go to the child class variant of this, because I think the reason why functions is better for this is because you can override them, whereas with event dispatchers, it's a bit messier, I think. So in the int counter version, it will call the parent function at the end. It'll call all this eventually, but before it does that, it has a variable that's specific to this child, which is just an integer value, and it just saves it. And then it sets the value of the, and it does this in a specific way. So when you set an integer value, it has to check a few things, because you can give it a maximum. So you can have it, for example, you know that mission I had at the interchange where it's like collect all 60 cogs? So this is sort of where this stuff comes into play. So you can have it so that there's a max value. And it's like, okay, if we've reached over that threshold, like once you've collected all 60 cogs, you can trigger an event like this, set metric complete. And it's all of that stuff. It's all self-contained in these functions. So you can have like, yeah, you can have all that sort of stuff. You can have it so that some missions have a time limit or a event counter. And this is all stuff I already had working before, but it was really buggy. Now it's a bit more reliable. But it's all inherited now. So it'll call that, and then it calls the parent function, which does the normal stuff. And I've essentially just got that going on, which is a lot. It was a lot of work because I had to basically tear everything down and rebuild it. But it's slightly less buggy. But then things got kind of more complicated because I started on a new thing that is now really buggy. And I don't know how to explain this next bit. It's kind of complicated. But essentially, because everyone was asking me last stream, like, why don't you just inherit it all? And now I'm doing that. But it isn't that simple. It's really complicated with what I had going, because I don't know, it's weird. Like when you're using actor components and children, I don't know what it is, but Unreal kind of just doesn't like it for some reason. But anyway, this is where we get to the next bit where things get really whack. This is where it gets weird, okay? So if I play the game, you'll notice something. Oh yeah, you'll see that it actually is now more broken. That's brilliant. I might have to compile, hold on. Might have to recompile the blueprint. So you'll say, oh, well, inheritance, that's great. It should all work, right? Haha, no. No. This is where it gets, this is where like I would just want to give up, okay? This is where yes, and like 10 minutes ago when I previewed this, when I touched that first cog, it would add to my score, and now it's not doing that. And when I would kill enemies, it would accrue score, and now it's not. This is where it gets really weird, okay? This is where it gets weird. I don't even know how to explain this, right? Because let's open up this error. Let's see what it's got. Okay, this is an issue I've been... So before I get into that, let me explain to you the new thing that I've been trying to do that's been causing more problems. I've got metrics, okay? I've got ways to track things. Those can be used a lot. And just for a bit of extra, like, why am I doing that all? Why am I doing all of that? because I mentioned that the main missions, I want to keep track of certain things. I want it to keep track of your score, time, and your amount of cogs you collected, and all that stuff. But linear games, especially like speedrun type games, there's a risk that you run with that, and that's why I explored the open level type route a lot before giving up on that. But the reason I was even pursuing that at all is because I've had this crippling anxiety that the game is going to be way too short, and if I charge some whatever price, even if it's something really undervalued, people are going to complain that it's like, oh, it's only 2 hours. It's like, it's not worth $2. You know, something like that. So that's a real issue that you got to keep track of. And I know that like some people would say that, oh, you know, I'd rather have a 15 minutes of fun than an hour of boringness or whatever. But my research has led me to believe that that's a minority of people. But the majority of people are going to very likely like complain if they feel that it isn't enough, even if it's like very good 15 minutes or whatever. So anyway, so I'm thinking with my linear type level structure, with like Skyport type levels, because that's a short level. And it's like, how the hell do you make good playtime out of that? And the answer is replay value. And this is something that's really cool. So, because I've kind of kept a loose eye on this, but I haven't really started. I didn't really pay serious attention to it until recently. But this is where you guys come in, because this is where you guys have kind of helped me out. If you search Project Feline on YouTube, I'll search it for you. Don't worry. I'm just gonna get my tab. It's just my Chrome is really laggy because I'm streaming. But if I search up my game on YouTube, we can see that I'm live, which is awesome. We can see more of my live, and it's just my content. But if you keep going, you will see other people's videos playing the game, and this is where the community kind of comes in handy, because oh god, it's all just me. Sorry, I make too much videos. How do I skip over my videos? Maybe it says gameplay. Yeah, if you search gameplay, you'll see a few in there. But you'll see that people are like, a lot of people are playing it, which is cool. I really appreciate that. But you'll notice that they're all playing Skyport specifically, which is an old level. Like, I have more levels, but everyone is playing. Okay, this is an old one, but if I search like from recent, there was one posted like the other day. Let's go this week. They're all playing. Okay, no one's posted anything this week. Oh, that's sad. What about this month? Has anyone posted it? Okay, we got this one from 3 weeks ago. Yeah, this is like, again, Skyport was released ages ago, right? And people are still playing it. This guy played it for like 2 whole minutes, right? But the thing is that this guy, or maybe not, I don't know how many times this guy's played it, but with a lot of these channels, they'll upload like multiple videos of Skyport. And what that tells me is that maybe what I should be focusing on isn't the length of the level, but how can I make it fun to replay the level each time? And that's where I think Gabby's mechanics come in really good, because I think I accidentally designed Gabby's mechanics in a way that makes it fun to replay, evidenced by the fact that there are lots of people that have just been playing Skyport over and over. So that was a complete accident. Like, I did not even realize that I was making replay value from the mechanics. But there's more to it, because that's one piece of the puzzle, right? There's more, because not only do you need the mechanics and level design to facilitate that, because I think the reason why people like replaying it is because they get better at it each time, and it's like shaving off seconds and whatever. But it's like, what if there was more incentive to replay it? So when I started doing this mission system, this was back for the open level design, but I realized that I can also use this for the linear design. So I could have it so that you can have one level, but you could make like 5 different missions for it. Like, you could have the normal version, you could have a time trial version that has different rules. You could have, you know, I think there are some other games that do that. I can't name any off the top of my head, but it's like, you can have like mission attack modes, like score attack modes and everything, just to kind of spice it up. And this is where I've kind of recontextualized it now, and it's like, oh, the system I was doing, maybe that'll still come in handy, even with the linear levels. That's why I'm continuing to make it. But of course, you know, things get kind of weird and complicated because of how I'm trying to do it. I'm trying to do it maybe a little too abstractly here. And I've already redone it 5 times. I don't think I can afford to redo it again. But yeah, just that's sort of why I'm doing it, just for some context. So I can basically make it so I can have another version of Skyport that's like collect 100 cogs and reach the goal. And you can make, the thing is not only being able to do those missions, but making those missions as a developer, I want is to be really easy. I want to be able to just open a level. I want to be able to, you know, go to one of these mission objects. This is like, this is how I want it to work, okay? So I click on one of these missions, like the act mission, which I've called it. This is like the default type of mission. And I can just click on, I can just click on it. I can go to the score. I can add a score thing to it and go, oh, okay, I want this mission to keep track of score. I want the rank prerequisites to be a certain value, and I want there to be a 2-minute time limit. Like, let's say 60 seconds. You know, that's how I want it to be that easy to create missions. Because the easier it is, then the more I can make, and that's more content for the player. But it's a weird balancing act, because the more you try and make the tools better, the more work you have to do on the tools. And it's kind of, you know, so we'll circle back around now to this current thing I'm trying to do, because I realized with the way I've done this now, with these inheritance and everything, is that, yeah, these have very broad implications. Like, you can use these for a lot of things. Like I mentioned, you can use them on gates, you can use them on enemies, you can use them on practically any object to do things, you know? And that's cool, because that could lead to a lot of cool level things and, you know, content ideas. And I want to encourage that and allow for that to happen, where it's like, oh, what if I added this component here, and then you have a whole new fun game thing going on. However, this is where it sort of gets, yeah, so I'm going to try and segue into this this current thing I'm doing. So I've got the metrics, but I have a new metric, a new component that I'm working on right now called a metric binder. And this is a solution to a very complicated problem I have with these metrics. And that is, what happens when you want, like, let's say you've got the mission. And now, just to clarify, the mission logic, like the score and time, is not running on the game mode. It's running on an object. And I did that so that you could like switch missions on the fly without having to like reload the whole level. It just makes it easier. And it's essentially, you could have just different objects with different parameters, like different missions with different parameters, and you can activate them without having like insane loading times and stuff. And there's something else I want to use this for later, which I won't get into, but it's going to be very beneficial for it. But the problem is, like, how do you communicate with other blueprints? Like, how do you get other blueprints to know which metric to modify? Because if any object can have metrics on it, how does the cog know where the score metric is? Because, you know, or you know, like an int counter. Because that's what I've changed it from event counter to int counter now, because int counter is very broad. And it's essentially what it does. It keeps track of an integer, right? Now, I use that to keep track of the cog counter on screen. You see that in the little UI thing at the bottom. I've got a new icon for that now, actually. It's got the little cog icon. Now, that is broken right now because the cog doesn't know where it is, or it's having difficulty binding to it. That's what the metric binder is supposed to solve, all right? Because let's say, you know, the mission has... Because the mission, remember, it's just an actor. The gate is also... Oh, oops. I was trying to zoom in on the gate. The gate is also an actor. This gate, which can have the same component on it. Like, this is also an actor. The mission is an actor. Both of these can have an int counter on them, and they can do different things. So the int counter on the actor might be there to keep track of cogs, but the int counter on the gate might trigger... you know, might be used to get the switches to open the gate. So if, you know, when you look at an object, it's like, how do you bind it to one thing? Or even so, what if you want it to bind to more than one thing? For example, let's say these cogs, maybe for the gate, instead of using switches, what if I had a cog and it's like, if you collect 10 cogs, you can open the gate? All right, if you wanted to do that, you would have to somehow tell the cog not only to increment the cog counter on the screen, but also to increment on the gate. And it's like, well, how the hell do you do that? And that's what I've tried to do with the metric binder. So the metric binder, it sounds really cool, the name. It essentially, you can add it to an object and you can give it certain parameters and it'll try and search for the right component. or multiple components, because it can actually do more than one. Well, it's supposed to be able to do more than one, but it's kind of not really working. So if we zoom in on the cog, there's another component here. So we've got this. I've made a few specific ones. For example, I've made one specifically for the score. So this one's called Score Binder, and this one will just, by default, it'll just search for the current mission that is active and check if it has a score metric on it and just assign that value to it. And then when you collect it, it'll tell the score to update. That's all it does. However, it has another binder on it as well called int metric binder, and this is actually used for the collectible counter. But what if I wanted to use that to open a gate or something as well, right? You know, I think enemies is actually probably a better example, because I want to have some missions in some instances and levels where you have like a section that's blocked off and you have to like defeat all the enemies in the area to unlock a gate. To do that, these need to contribute to your score, but they also need to contribute to that counter of the gate or something, you know? So anyway, I probably explained that enough. I think you guys get the point. But the issue is just the way I'm trying to, I don't know, something about how I'm doing this is just not working. Because if I try and play it, you'll notice that none of the numbers increment. You'll see a print string, which is used to test something, and you'll find that, like, you know, half an hour ago it was working, and now it isn't for some weird reason, even though I didn't touch any code. So I'm kind of running into the same problems I was last year, where I don't know, it's like compiler type stuff. I don't understand those problems really that well. But you know, as far as the metrics themselves are concerned, those are mostly fine. It's just binding them is now where I'm having issues. So if we go into some of these errors, you'll notice that it's pointing to this specific node, and there'll be other times where it's pointing to something else. And I've made a few notes in these to try and figure out what the issue is. But if I go into these, you'll see that let's see if I can explain one of them. Here's the int binder, the metric int binder. The event graph is empty. It just has functions on it, because I've noticed that functions tend to work a little bit better. And what I do is, what this object does, what you're supposed to be able to do, I'll try and show you how this is meant to work. Let's say you have an enemy, and it's like you want this to contribute to more than one thing. What you should be able to do is go to the int metric binder. I'll have to open this up, because yeah, some of these are temporary, some of these variables, some of them aren't. I'm still kind of working on it. Let's say I wanted to bind these to two things. So let's say I want this to increment the score. So I'll give it the mission actor, but I also want the gate to increment as well. So you'll give it multiple objects. So you can input an array of actors, and then for each actor, it'll get the metrics from that actor, and then it'll essentially save them so that you can do stuff to it. There we go. Oh, why is that not working? Oh, it must be on a different layer. All right, well, let's, why is that? Must be on a different layer, I don't know. Well, let's copy that. Or maybe I need to be on a specific... Yeah, because I've got a lot of gameplay layers going on. Well, I think this is the one I want to paste it to. So I should be able to select this. So if I go to the integer binder, and then I can pick... Yeah, now it's got the gate selected too. So what this should do... I've got these actors. I can give it an array of actors, and it's like, okay, so when this runs, it's supposed to search both of these, anything in this array, for integer metrics. And I'll show you where they are in the blueprints. So if I were to open the mission, so this is the actual mission actor, this does have a few, and here's where things get kind of complicated, right? Because it does have an int, I've renamed them to be kind of easier to read, but this is an int counter. But here's the thing, so is that, and so is that. So here's the problem. Okay, I've cast to that mission, and I have found a integer counter, but I've also found two more. And it's like, how do you know which one? So this is where there's a few more variables that I've tried to add. This is where this kind of comes in handy. So I've tried to had a little tick box here called use ID. And if you tick that on, you can give it a specific index and it'll basically know, you can use that to tell which one you want. So if I open the mission again, wherever that is, you'll see here's the score. And if we go here, you'll see that the ID is 1. If I go to the cogs, you'll see that the ID is, oh, where did it go? If I go to cogs, this again, because these are all from the same parent class, it'll all count them as it'll count them as the same object. This one's ID is 0, and then there's a third one. This doesn't do anything; it's just a test one to see if it'll still work if I add more. And this one's ID is 3. So if I wanted to just get that last one, where's my magnifier? I could basically, you know, I minimize that and I go, okay, for this one, use ID 3. Now, there's a bit of issues with this because this and having the array and that kind of won't work because I've got two, yeah, oh, let me plug this in. Because there's two, when I was making this, I had an epiphany and I was like, maybe I should just make these work with one actor instead of two, but then I realized that I should kind of have it working with multiple because otherwise I'd have to add a new binder for each thing I wanted to change. And it's really difficult to add components to objects at runtime. It can get really complicated. So I wanted to just have them as an array. But, you know, it gets kind of weird. It gets kind of complicated. But I think what you can do, if I wanted to use... I'll just clear these. I think what you can do, actually, is if I wanted to use Mission Act 2, because it'll get all of the... it will ID them all and get them in a certain order. And this is what was really complicated. It'll get, for each of these arrays, it'll get those mission metrics, but because there's like 3 of them on the act and then there's only 1 on the gate, it'll actually it'll make like 4 array entries. And these correspond to the IDs, but they increment based on the object. So the second object will start here, and then the IDs will start incrementing from there. So if I wanted to find just that third one I added, that'll be this one. This, whatever this value is. So I can tell that one to like add 100. And for the others, I'll just maybe, I should be able to have them ignore those ones, I think. But you'll notice if I try and play it, it probably won't, like it won't work. Because there's a lot of weird reasons it won't work. But that's a demonstration of how it should be, how easy it should be, but it isn't, right? Now here's where things get really weird, and this is the issue I had in my last video. Because you'll notice something now. Now that I've compiled the mission, when I make changes to a mission, even if I don't compile it, or I think it does auto-compile, you'll notice that the metrics all start acting differently now. You'll notice that the score metric is now working, and the collectible counter is also working. Every time I collect a cog, it adds 100 to the cog counter. And it's like, why is that working now? I literally didn't change anything. That's a good question, and I honestly don't know the answer, because if I go to the base metric component, which all the metrics are reliant on, and if I just press compile on this without changing anything, and then if I play the mission again, it will act different. So I've kind of done a big circle, and I've come back to the exact same problem I had. And you'll also notice that there's an additional metric on the screen now that wasn't there before. That's supposed to be there. That's that test, that's index 3. That's that test metric I made, just as an example. But if I make a change to the mission, you'll notice that it will not, the last metric that I've added to the mission just won't work, and I don't know why. And you'll now notice that the score counter doesn't increment anymore. Well, it does sometimes. It's weird. So this is, I don't know how good a job I did explaining that, but you, my rubber duck, this is what I needed to get out, because I am so confused on why that's even happening. I don't know. It's the same issue I had in the video. It's come back again, but in a different way. There are some issues I fixed doing it with functions and doing it with the refactoring the inheritance and having it all inherited. That can now kind of work without breaking as much. And it also is a lot more flexible than last year's version. It's actually way more flexible now if it can work. But that's if it works, and it doesn't work half the time. So that's the thing. If I can get it working, it is going to be an amazing tool for just making content, because you can have lots. It's basically a whole conditions system, essentially, but it's also used to keep track of scoring and time, and it can keep track of lots of data, which is very handy. And yeah, if I can get it to work just in those things, then I won't have to touch the code for those ever again. And I can basically make lots of things without having to like program new things. I can all just work from this. But it's really finicky at the moment, presently. So you'll notice that now that I've recompiled the mission component after compiling the mission, it kind of works a little bit better now. Like the score, okay, now the enemies aren't incrementing the score, but the collectibles are adding 100 points to everything. So yeah, that's kind of a cool side effect that kind of demonstrates what I'm trying to do, but it just doesn't do it with the right settings. But when I collect one of those cogs, this is how powerful the system is. If I touch one of them, you'll see how it increments all three of those numbers. It increments score, cog, and this test metric in the middle. It can do things on all of them with one binder on them. So that one binder can get all the components in an actor and do things to all of them. So imagine how powerful that can be once you can get it to work, because you can essentially have it so that, you could have enemies or whatever object you want trigger metrics on multiple objects with one binder. But that's if it works, and it just, I don't know, man, it's just driving me crazy. So I don't know if any of that made sense. I just wanted to touch base with you guys and show you what I've been up to, because I know I've been kind of quiet. I've just been busy with this and like some real life stuff. So, I know I haven't really been on stream for a bit, and I'm running out of time. I know I kind of spent all of it not really making progress, just trying to explain the system, but I needed to get it out, and I needed to explain it to someone. So, I'll show you a few of my theories on what's going on, because I am just completely, I have some theories, okay? I left a bunch of notes. So here's a few notes, okay? So I've noticed, I did some research, because these functions, because when you get to the skeleton of these things, they get kind of weird. If I go to the metric bind component, because there's also children of this, there's the metric int bind component, and these are designed to get specific types of metrics. And this has a specific function, and this is the one that's causing the error for some reason. Or actually, no, it's not this one, it's a different one. It's this one that's causing the error. So an int binder, because there's a normal binder, which can just get all metrics of any kind. The int binder will only get specifically the int metrics, and the float binder will get specifically the float metrics. And I only really have two types of metrics right now. I only have int and floats. The integers are the majority, and then the only float metric I have is just the stopwatch. That's literally it. And maybe health. I think that's another metric too. Actually, yeah, you'll notice that the speedometer and health are both missing, because those are now broken. So yeah, even like the speedometer is a metric. The health display on screen, like how many hit points you have, is also a metric. So just to like kind of put it in perspective, like a lot of things will rely on this, because it's very versatile, and you can basically you can track whatever kind of metric you want on screen with this system. That's the goal. It's just getting it like past that point where it actually will not work, will not break. But a few of my theories are, like in this function, for instance, this is supposed to, I call this, like, let me show you when this is called, just so it kind of makes a bit more sense. Because I know this is probably a lot to take in. It probably doesn't really make sense to anyone except me, because even I don't really get it. But if I open the collectible base class, I'll show you this in practice of how this is supposed to work in code. So there's a function called setCollected on the collectibles. And what this does is that it basically determines whether or not we've it'll set the collected state of the collectible. And if it is collected, it'll increment your score and your collectible count, and it'll disappear. That's what it's supposed to do. And I have a sequence of events. So it does a few Boolean stuff. It plays a particle thing. It plays a sound effect. It'll turn the collision off so that you can't collect the same cog twice. This is where the metrics come into it. And this like this one here, it'll get the score binder, and this doesn't work sometimes, right? But what's supposed to do, it's supposed to get the current mission and get the score, and then increment your score by a certain amount of points, which you can set for each cog. So you can actually have it so that some cogs are worth more points. So you can maybe make them like special cogs. Like you could have a cog that's a different color that is like a bonus one that gets like 500 points or something. You can do that kind of stuff. This next one is more broad. This is like where the broader int value thing comes into play. Because this one will get the int binder component, which I do have on here, and it'll get all the int metrics and do stuff to them. But what it does specifically, you can configure. So you can actually tell it to skip over some of them, and you can tell it, you know, to do a lot of stuff. But the int binder here, this is where I had that array where it's like, you know, bind to different actors and get the int counter metrics from those actors. This is where this is triggered. So when you collect a cog, it'll call that and say, hey, get our int binder, get all the actors that we've been bound to, get the metric, the int not just the metrics, but the specific, this specific kind of metric, because this is a child of the metric component. So it'll just get the ones that track integers, like score and the collectible counter. It won't get the watch, because that's not an int metric, that's a float metric. So it'll get that stuff, and it'll set the value. So, you know, you could have like that interchains mission where it's like collect all 60 cogs, and it has that little readout at the top of the screen where it says 0 out of 60, and that updates. That's what this is sort of supposed to do with that kind of stuff. Well, when it works at least, but it doesn't work half the time. So anyway, let me close some of these windows. What was I? Yeah. So that's kind of it in practice. This is where the functions are getting called. But you'll notice some things, and this is my theory of what I think's going on. I've got the int metric, this function, which is part of the int binder, and this function then uses this, and then this function uses this function. And you might say, yeah, that's kind of inception there, right? It's like, yeah, it kind of is. There's a lot of buried functions here. But I think one of the issues I've noticed is because I've tried to make them pure functions. Because the way I get it is, for those who know will know, but for those who don't know, there's a difference between pure functions and impure functions. These green nodes are pure functions, and I'll make an impure function as a test to show you. This is an impure function, which has you'll notice that the difference, if I turn pure on, is that it makes it blue, and it has exec nodes on it. Now, I did a bit of reading on these because I've developed kind of an intuition on what I think should be an impure function based on how I've seen Unreal's default blueprints used. Because Unreal has a bunch of stock functions that come with Unreal, like this, for instance, get component by class. I didn't write this function. This is an Unreal Engine function. This comes with the engine. And you'll notice it's an impure function. Oh, sorry, this is a pure function. Some of Unreal stuff are impure. But I've noticed a trend where most of the stuff that is pure usually just gets things. And stuff that is impure usually sets things. That's just something I've noticed and picked up on. So I've tried to kind of use that in my own functions. So this function, getActors, is supposed to check. So this actor array is what I showed you earlier. If I go to the metric binder, this is this array of actors, so I can bind it to multiple actors. So that's this. So it gets them, but it has a boolean, because it isn't as simple as just getting the variable, because it has to do a little bit extra to it. Because what happens if you don't assign this value and leave it empty? Well, then it won't do anything. But there is one boolean I have, because sometimes, because to modify these components, like the metric binder, and to tell it which actors to assign, it's complicated because you can't just... Because let's say I wanted all of these cogs to increment score. Well, that's great, right? But to do that, I have to click on each one individually, and my engine's kind of... There we go. It's a bit frozen there. I have to click on each one individually, and I have to scroll down to the metric binder, and I have to, like, add the mission to the array. And I have to do that for all of them. Because you can't select them, and this is the weird kind of quirk with Unreal I've noticed, is that, sorry, my zoom is, there we go, is that you can't select multiple and change the components. Like, if you select multiple, that whole components menu is just gone. Like, you can't actually go into each component, which is really weird. I don't know why it's like that. But if I click on an individual one, all the components are there and I can change stuff. So that means you have to go to each individual one, go to the int metric, assign the mission or whatever. So to mitigate that, because I know that one of the more common actors that you'll want to bind these to is the current mission, whatever that is. So I've added a boolean called include active mission. And this is what gets put in this function. So when you, if you've left this array empty and you have this boolean on, it won't even care that it's empty. It'll just go and fetch the current mission that's active, and it'll do that with this this variable which knows it knows which mission is active through other code I've written, and then it just sets that to the array, and it won't replace the actors you've already put there as well, which is the kind of the cool bit, is that if you do have other actors in there that aren't the mission, it won't replace them. It'll actually add on top. So if you have like the gate assigned, and if you tick include active mission, it'll include that in addition to the gate for the metric bind. And that's what this function does. It literally just does, it gets the array, it sets it to a local variable, because I've noticed that kind of helps. It then will check if you want to include the active missions. It then goes and gets the active mission, and then increments the local variable. Actually, wait. Maybe it... yeah, no, okay, yeah. It has to be plugged in like that. And then adds it to it, and then it returns that value, which then gets used in other places. It then gets used in the get metrics, where it then goes and gets all the actors that we've received, which it will include that mission. It then will get each metric component, and then it will... make an array of just the metric components only, which you can then use for other things later. So it separates them out. So you have an array of actors, an array of metrics, and this is where things get kind of weird, because I've done a bit of more reading with for loops and these sorts of things, and I read somewhere that these two together are a bad idea apparently. As some article I found, where apparently if you try to use get components by class, or sorry, if you try and, this is like a particular function it can have trouble with, but it's like if you try and get an array and then do stuff to the array in a for loop, it'll act really weird, which is what I've noticed. So I've written down some theory. I think I was like in the middle, it's like 4 a.m. yesterday. I was like trying to do this, and I added a few notes where it's like maybe I should find a different way to iterate these loops, like maybe cache them or something. And then I don't know. Anyway, I'm kind of rambling now. I've sort of lost track of like, there's a lot of issues, right? There's a lot of weird stuff going on. I'm not doing the stream to like ask for help or anything, because this isn't your problem. I just wanted to tell you guys what I've been up to, just so you know I wasn't dead, and show you what's cooking. Because this is the sort of stuff that isn't really worth making a devlog about, because there's no value. Like, you guys don't get anything from this. You're not going to learn anything from this. It's just like, I wonder what's happening in Project Feline right now. Well, this is kind of it on my side of it, at least. Anyway, sorry, I have not read chat the whole time. I'm sorry. How are you guys doing? Did you follow all that? Probably not. But thanks for being my rubber duck. I kind of do have to go soon though. I wanted to get more done, but I'm on a tight, because I've got to go out later. So that was. I'll just see if there's any questions in here. Do you set a variable before or after runtime? I'm not sure, maybe. I don't think so. No, I don't think so. Oh, no, I think you can set variables from the instance on some of these. Like, you can set them here, but it'll also then do stuff during runtime to these as well, which might be causing some issues, perhaps. I feel like he needs a programmer consultant. I know, I probably could use one, but those are expensive and I have like no money. So it's like, that's not really an option. I will use this opportunity to address some questions I've been getting on my last video, because I was looking through them again just to see what people took away from the Screen Australia saga. And someone asked, like, why do you need all that money if for a game development? Like, where does that get spent? And that's a good question. I thought I'd just bring that up real quick. So, because games aren't free, you gotta, like, I've been very lucky where I've been very cheap so far about everything. I've been very economical, but I also saved up quite a bit first before I started the game. But after like 4 years, you gotta, like, if you don't have a big income stream, that money does deteriorate over time. So with things like merch sales and YouTube video, like, that is all kind of nice. It does bring in some income, but it doesn't bring in that much. It kind of evens out, really, but you're not, like, unless you be very economical, you're not going to be able to make enough to hire someone. That's where the Epic Mega Grant came in real handy. Without that, I wouldn't have Matt working on the game right now. So I know I haven't talked much about what he's been doing lately. He's been doing a lot of stuff lately as well, in addition to what I'm messing around with here. I'll show you his work when it's ready, when I can merge all the branches together, which I'm really excited for, because it's amazing. But without that Mega Grant, I would have had to do all that manually myself, or just not, like, completely change, like, the scope of the game or something like that. So it's kind of where, like, that sort of, most of the funding I would have gotten if the Screen Australia grant worked, a lot of that would have gone to contracting. Well, not a lot of it. Well, there was a certain division. We did have to provide a very detailed budget for all of it. And I think there was a certain portion for contracting. There was a portion, a lot of it was, like, mostly admin type stuff, like trademarking and website domains, software, like Adobe, fonts, licenses. What else was there? Things like tax, because I think you have to pay tax on it. I'm not don't quote me on that. I'm not entirely sure about the Screen Australia grant, but I think we may have had to pay tax. I know that I did have to pay tax on the Epic Mega Grant. And then there's, like, a lot of it, the main reason I asked for that and submitted was so that I could get a contracting budget, so that I could hire people. But because that didn't happen, because that didn't fall through, I now don't have, like, the budget for contracting is, like, it would have been this, but now it's like this. So I've literally, the last of it I've got from the Mega Grant, I'm spending now on having Matt do levels. And after that, I've got, like, nothing to spend on contractors. So when you get in that position, you've got one of two options. You either do it all yourself for, like, below minimum wage, or you try and get more funding. And that's kind of something else that I've had on my mind lately. I'm not going to get too much into it, but let me just say that it feels very defeating, because getting money is really complicated, as you've now seen with the last video I had. I tried really hard, but, sometimes it's like that question of, if you get more, you can hire more people. But to get that money in the first place is, as you saw, like, that whole thing with the contracting, that was months. And it led to nothing. So the position I'm in now, this is kind of more of a meta, big picture thing with development. I'm at this sort of crossroads now where it's like, should I bother to look for more grants if this is how it's going to be? If I'm going to get into fights like this every time, if I'm going to have to spend 2 or 3 months just negotiating, because that's time. And it's like, do I want to afford fighting all those battles, or do I just want to work below minimum wage and do it myself and just hope that the game will make back enough? Because that's kind of the thing. So, like, I'm in a very lucky position. I try and live very, very, very cheaply. Even, like, here's an example of how cheap I am, okay? I want to show you an example of how cheap I am right now. I found this today. I was going to get my hair cut at the local shops, and I went to Vinny's, and I found this. Isn't that cool? This is just completely random. I wasn't expecting to find this. This was $2, okay? And, yeah, I don't buy anything brand new. Like, media and games, I don't buy them a lot, and when I do, it's from secondhand Vinny shops, okay? So instead of paying for Spotify, I can just listen to this for $2. Hell yeah. So anyway, that's just a little micro example. But Yeah, so I just on that point of like, I should get a consultant, I should get help, because that's actually something that has sort of been in everyone's mind, I think, for a long time, is why is Ray doing all this himself? He could get help, but it's like, if you want good help, it's going to cost you. And I don't think that's bad. I think you should pay for good help, but you need to pay for good help from somewhere. Now, for me, that's been my mega grant, but that's running out. So it's like, my help budget is very low right now. So that's why I'm putting myself through this and doing it all myself. And I might continue to just do it this way because, you know, because that's the thing. There's more grants I've looked for, but you know, I look at them and go, and like publishers too, because I know publishers can get funding, but it's like, I look at some of them and I'm like, I don't know anything about publishing, right? I've never done that before. I don't know how to negotiate. I don't know what kind of terms are expected. I don't have any of my own experience to draw from. Do I want to go through the trouble of trying to learn that and trying to learn to negotiate that like I did with Screen Australia and have it potentially not work and amount to nothing? Or do I just want to soldier through it without any help? Because at least that way, I know that I'm not getting myself into any contracts. I know that I have complete control. It just means it's going to be more brute force. And I understand what that risk is. Like, I understand what brute force is. I know what's at stake with brute force. But when it comes to more complicated things like a grant or an investment, it's like, that has, as you've seen, can get very complicated. And that learning how to manage that can cost a lot of time. So if I went to look for 5 more grant programs, and if they all turned out like Screen Australia, that would take 2 years just to negotiate. Like, if you did the math, that would actually take like 2 years. If I went to like 5 more grant programs and they all happened exactly that way, that's 5 years or 2 years or whatever spent on trying to get money and not work on the game, which it's tough. I don't really know what I'm going to do about that. But that's just something that's kind of been on my mind. So yeah, that's why I don't accept like volunteers. That's why I don't, because yeah, I don't like to depend that much unless I'm paying someone. So it's like, you know, because I've had a lot of people reach out to me saying like, oh, I'll help you for free. You know, and that's very generous and it's very nice, but I don't know. That's not fair. You should not be working for me for free. That doesn't seem fair at all, because you think you're going to get something out of it, but you're probably not. Like, let's be real. You're going to help me on my project. You're really not going to get much out of it, and you're going to get more out of it getting paid to do something somewhere else, probably. Like, I think a lot of people that write to me are kind of looking for a start. They're looking for a starting point. Honestly, I'm not that place. I'm not the place you should start. You should start at some company with people that kind of know what they're doing, and they should pay you. That's, at least if it were me, that's what I would be doing. I wouldn't be going on YouTube trying to find people's projects and volunteer for them, because I don't know, like, it just doesn't seem right to me to do that. It seems, and especially if it's a commercial game, it's really not right to do that, because I'm obviously trying to sell this at some point, and if I was to rely on free help, it kind of screws over that person that's being generous, because they don't get anything from it. And they might say, oh, well, I got the experience of working on this game. But yeah, you can get that and still get paid for it somewhere. Like, you don't have to give yourself out like that. You can get that somewhere else and get money, which you should probably do if you have any like self-respect, I think. Because, you know, I used to do that. I used to do free work, and I really wish I didn't. The only reason I do free work on this is because it's my game. Literally. If this was someone else, I wouldn't bother. If this was someone else's game and they were asking me to work below like really low hours, which I have had asked before, you know, someone offered me like $20 an hour to do like realistic character work for like 15 hours a week for $20 an hour. And I was like, no, no, thanks. That sounds like a waste of time. So, you know, the only reason I'm putting myself through this is because I personally have a stake in this. Like, I'm very passionate about it. And I think it's because it's my project, I can afford that, but I don't want to demand that of other people, because it's just not fair, because it's not yours. You shouldn't have to do that for me. So anyway, sorry, that was a kind of off topic, but that just to put things in kind of perspective on that, because that's something I do get asked a lot about, of like accepting help. And it's with Matt, because you'll notice that it's not that I'm opposed to getting help. I just like doing it the right way. And I like asking the right people. Like, I got help from my dad, for instance, with the whole contracting stuff. which now that was free, but that was my dad also, so it's kind of different there. But I really, I didn't expect him to go out of his way for me like that. And then with Matt, we worked out a contract, and we had done it all officially and stuff. Like, I spent like months learning how to write contracts. This was way before Screen Australia, by the way. This is like 6 months. This is why I was very critical of Screen Australia's contract, is because I had done a lot of research on contracting to get Matt on board. I didn't just go up to him and go, hey man, because we've known each other for a while, but I didn't just go up and go like, hey, I'm working on the game. Do you want to can you do some models for me? No, I wrote up a whole thing. We had a budget. I said, I'll pay you this much for each thing. We both agreed to it. We signed it, and we did it. And it was great. But to do that repeatedly, you need money. And that's something I'm trying to conserve very carefully in the position I'm in right now. So anyway, ECS-oriented design. Okay, on that topic, here's the other thing, because there is a guy I know that knows a lot about that stuff. And I actually wanted him to do this work. He was one of my former students. He's been doing heaps of research into these kinds of systems. And he did a lot of research on Overwatches, because I think Overwatch is ECS. They have some custom engine where it's it uses that kind of thing. And when I would meet up for him for lunch, he would always go into these hour-long things explaining it. And it was brilliant. He's really passionate about that stuff. But I literally can't afford to have him work on it. It would cost too much. So it's I told him, I said, hey, if I get the Screen Australia grant, I'd like you to work on this thing for me, because I have other stuff I need to do. But then the grant didn't fall through, so I can't hire him. I know he might do favors for me if I ask nicely, but I don't know. I don't like that. It feels unfair to him. So anyway, what time is it? I have to get going. Sorry, I've rambled on too long. Sorry. Yeah, we didn't really get much done this stream. I just wanted to catch everyone up on what's going on. Show you some of the bugs I'm having. This is kind of... There's always moments like this in development. I guess this is kind of more of a slice of life type stream. There's always things like this that come up. So those big gaps of time between my videos, a good portion of that is things like this, where it's just, you get stuck on things. And eventually you get through it. I know there's going to be some combination of nodes that is going to solve this. I don't know what it is yet. But after today, I think I've got a better idea, because now I've explained it to someone else. I have no idea if any of those people really got what I was saying, but it's allowed me to process what's going on, I think. I think I might know where to start fixing this, so I don't know, I might come back tomorrow maybe to try and fix it all. But yeah, part of the reason I haven't been streaming is because a lot of this I don't think is that interesting, frankly. I just wanted to show you what was up, because I know that it, when I go more than a few weeks without saying anything, people worry and go, is the game cancelled? The game's not cancelled, I've just been stuck on this thing at the moment. But yeah, do I have... Oh yeah, no, I should probably go, because if I start trying to work on one of these, I'm going to go over time. I just want to see if there's any bits of little nuggets in here. Visual scripting, array manipulation... Yeah, I've tried using maps. I don't know. It's weird. I think the issue is, I was explaining something about pure functions and impure functions, and I have noticed one thing, which I started doing last night, but I didn't think I saved my changes. Let me just find where it is. There's a specific function. Sorry, I've just buried it somewhere. Yeah, so this thing where I've got get actor and get metric and all that stuff. Oh yeah, I had a note here. Yeah, so I found more. Actually, I did find more issues with this last night, where if I used this node, it wouldn't work. It actually would not get the right metric if I use this. So. My brain's too frazzled to figure out what to do about that. But this right here, I think this is one of the key issues. I've noticed that if this gets changed to an impure function, it will work slightly better, but still not really. And I don't know why, because by all accounts, I want this to be a pure function, because it literally just gets something. It's a getter. That's what they call it in programming. You've got getters and setters. This is literally a getter function. And I don't see why this should not be pure. And I don't know, maybe one of you can explain to me just in basic terms if any of this looks like it should not be in a pure function. Because that's the only thing I'm kind of thinking is I want this to be pure because in context it feels like it should be a pure function because it just gets an actor. And every instance in Unreal where I look at the default functions where it gets something, it's always a pure function. But maybe there's something I'm doing here that's not good. Like there's certain, I don't know what the practices are for pure and impure functions. All I know is that general advice I've heard is if you're doing complex math, you don't want that in a pure function. But this isn't complex math at all. But maybe, I don't know, is setting things or using invalid, are those things just not supposed to do in a pure function? I honestly don't know. I've tried to look this up, but I have not found any. The information I'm finding isn't that helpful. So I don't know if anyone can just. Does anyone like instantly look at this and go, "Oh yeah, no, that's you idiot. You don't use that on a pure function." Because if not, then I don't know. I'll find something else. But if you look at this and go, "Oh yeah, don't do that," then that'll help me out a little to at least know to change this. What's NQ saying? Yes to what? Is that a yes as in this is fine, or a yes that there's a problem? Coroutine. I don't know what coroutine purity is. Could you make a video on how to create inline Genshin? I have no idea what that is. I have never played Genshin Impact, and I don't know how to use UE. I've never used UE5. Sorry. Hi Tim. That's an odd username. Tim. I don't know, is this the Tim I think it is, or is this some random dude named Tim? That's cool. That's cool. I like when people have usernames that are easy to pronounce. That's awesome. Oh, it is you. Oh, cool. You're nice. Thanks for dropping by. OOP is a bit wacky. Do not apply the same tool to everything. Yeah. See, that's the thing. Here's the last thing I just want to get out there, because this stream is essentially just me ranting about programming. But the thing I want to get out there is, so my student that I mentioned, because he got really into this stuff about like what is it called? I don't know if it's composition or OOP or there's some word that somebody used in here earlier and I don't know what it was. There's a specific word. It's a type of programming. I don't know what it was, but I don't know. It's but the thing ECS. That's it. ECS. So there's ECS. And then there's OOP. And I think what I'm trying to do, this is kind of the weird thing with Unreal, is I'm trying to apply, I think it's principles of ECS. I'm not 100%, don't quote me on that. But I think it's the principles of ECS is what I'm trying to do. But I'm doing it in Unreal, which is object-oriented. And I think there's just conflict when you try and do that, because the engine I don't think is meant to be used that way. I could be wrong. I could be completely wrong. But that's the vibe I'm getting from because I've spent so long trying to get this to work, and it's just constant weird problem. Real quick, just a general question I have for you, any programmers in chat. This is literally all I really want to ask. I'm not asking for you guys to program this for me. No, not that. I just want to ask some just a general programming question. Has anyone else had issues where you have like an actor and you have a component on that actor, and if you compile the component first and then the actor, it behaves one way, but if you compile the actor first and then the component, it then acts differently? Is that normal? Is that just a me thing? Because that is the one thing that I've been constantly fighting against. Because I've refactored this like 3 times now, and in every instance, that is the one weird bug that I keep coming across, is that if I compile the mission and then compile the component, it will act completely broken. But if I do it the other way around, it works. And you might say, oh, well, yeah, just compile it then in the order and it should work. But here's the thing, is that I'm very worried about that. Because I'm worried that that is a symptom of a much bigger problem that's going to have very bad ramifications in the future. And that might sound like a conspiracy, like far-reaching thing. But I have a gut feeling that if I ignore that, then it's going to be really hard to port the game to other, compile it to other platforms. Like if I try and compile this somewhere else, because this sounds like a compiler issue, because you have to compile one thing then the other. My question is, why? I don't know why that happens. Does anyone know why that happens? And also, should I worry about that at all? Because I'm worried that if it is something serious, then that might, because if you try and package the game, is it gonna mess up? How does it know how to compile it the right way when I hit package? Is that gonna compile it in the wrong order, and is it going to be all weird? And if I compile it for different platforms, is it going to be different if I observe this behavior in the editor? Like if it's already this bad in the editor, is it going to be worse? Or do I simply just like ignore it and go, okay, well, I'll just compile this and then that, and then I hit package and it'll just do it, like it'll just work itself out? Because it's been my experience that so far it has worked itself out in packaging, but I'm worried that there's an accident that's not meant to be. I don't know. I'm just kind of worried. I'm kind of worried. You have no... Okay, Nathan has no idea, but with Unity, there's a lot of bugs. Order dependent yeah, see, that's the thing. Is using components order dependent, I wonder? Well, actually, Nathan, I have another interesting phenomenon, another interesting observation I've made. I'm going to show you this. Maybe you guys might find this weird. I don't know. I just want to put it all out there. I'll show you the kind of issues I've got right now. I'm not really asking for anything to be done about it. I just wanted to kind of show you what's going on. But if I go to one of these... actually, let me show you a great example. I'll go to the mission actor. And we'll give it a custom thing. Like, we'll go to the mission component. And we'll tell this mission not to auto-load. So that means when I play the game, the mission won't activate. I have to manually activate it by running into the collider. Now, if I play, you'll notice... Oh, well, yeah, I'll spawn into the ground. You'll notice that. But if I have it ticked on, you'll notice that the mission will automatically enable, and it'll spawn the metrics on screen. But watch this. Okay? I'm going to go back, and I'm going to untick auto-load mission. Now watch this, because this is an instance. I've made a change to this instance, but if I go to the metric component, if I hit compile, wait a minute. Oh no, that's not the right one. Sorry, it's the mission component. That's let me open the mission component. If I open the mission component, now I want you to pay close attention to that tick box I've just done. I know it's a bit hard to see, but pay close attention. If I'm gonna hit compile off screen, it's you won't see the button because I'm zoomed in. I'm about to click it right now. See? It changed it. It completely changed this. But it didn't change these other ones. Like if I untick that and tick this and hit compile. Hold on. Let me I gotta get it so that you can still see it on screen. And I can still oh. Can you guys still see that? I hope so. If I hit compile, yeah, you see how this one down here didn't change, but the one up there did when I hit compile. So, like, what's going on? I don't know. What on earth is happening there? So that's another little thing I've observed, which is annoying. Like, it isn't... I don't know if it's causing problems. It's just kind of annoying, but I'm very worried that there's some bigger, more serious issue that this is a symptom of that I'm not seeing with the way I'm trying to use components. And it's just been on my mind for the last few weeks. And I'm like, what if this whole thing is just, even if I get it working in editor, when you package it, it's just going to completely fall to pieces. I have no clue. I don't know. I'm just trying to do the best I can with it, but I think like I've explained what I'm trying to do, and I think what I'm trying to do doesn't sound too crazy. I think it sounds very I think in theory, this thing I'm trying to do, I think it sounds very efficient in the sense that this tool, when working, will do wonders for the game. It'll make content creation way easier, and I want content creation to be easy because I'm going to have a bunch of other problems during alpha. We're in alpha right now, I guess, technically speaking. But I'm going to have a lot of stuff to do for the rest of alpha, and I want content creation to be one of those things that I don't have to worry about too much because I can just, I just drag this component in and that component in, and then it works, and cool, now I've got a new mission. Now I can go move on to animating this thing or composing a new track for this level or what, because there's a lot of stuff I'm going to have to do. So I'm trying to invest time now to avoid tech debt later. And this is a big kind of thing that is kind of more of a philosophical conundrum of tech debt. How much should you try and avoid it? Because at the moment, I would say it's almost been an equal amount of work trying to avoid tech debt than to just have tech debt. But I don't know for sure. The only way to know is if I actually went and did the other thing. But we're at this timeline now where I've tried to avoid tech debt, and it's been a lot of work. And I think if I can just get it right, it will pay off. But I'm not there yet, and it's just really frustrating. Anyway, that's full. Wait, what's a full project rebuild? Let me look that up. I have no idea what that is. I'm gonna look that up right now, Enku. Unreal full rebuild. That actually might be something I should look into. Let's have a look. If enabled, a full rebuild will be enforced each time the project is being packaged. I'll look into that. I'm gonna have to set up a little thing where it only, because for me to build it, it's going to build all the levels. It's going to take like a few hours because the game files are really big. So I'm going to have to set up something where I've only got a few levels, like maybe just the test level in all the systems, and just try and package those things only and build those, and I'll test this out. Thanks, Salad Man. Yeah, exactly. See, I think the structure-wise, I think it's a good idea. It's just like, I don't know, man. It's probably because I'm, again, I'm not a programmer. That's probably the reason. I'm just not that good at programming. I'm just trying to do the best with what I know. And there's a lot I don't know. But yeah. But this is kind of, just to make a meta point, and I do have to go like in the next few minutes, but it's like, the meta point here, I guess, is if you're going to do solo development like me, if you're going to be very conservative about spending and just do everything, this is the kind of stuff you should be prepared for. Is if you don't have the funds to outsource this, you're going to have to do it, and this is kind of how it is like sometimes. I'm not too worried. Like, as much as I hate myself right now, I accept that. I'm not too, because the alternative is a lot harder, I think. But that's just something to keep in mind. If anyone here is looking to do solo dev, this is the kind of stuff that can happen to you. If you have like a very small budget and you're trying to do big things, and you have to teach yourself everything, this is gonna happen to you. And I think I can get through it. It's just there's something in there that's got to change. There's one correct combination of nodes I have to figure out. But yeah. Kibble says it's an issue with blueprints being glitchy because C++ packages building on top of... yeah, see, that's the thing I'm trying to figure out. Because I'm wondering, to understand this issue, am I going to need to then start learning like the C++ compiler? Because I did go down some rabbit hole once, and I don't know how accurate this information was. But it was this whole thing about how if you use, like if I go to the actor, if you use more than one, because this is the issue I had last year, because these two components, cogs and score, inherit from the same class. It inherits from a base actor component. And I've noticed an issue where if you've got more than one of these on an actor that derive from the same parent, it just acts weird. I don't know if anyone else has noticed that. I haven't seen anyone talk about it. in the forums. I've tried searching far and wide for this specific problem, and I think there was only one thing I found like last year. It was some weird rabbit hole I went down, and it was this guy saying that it happens because of the C++ headers or something. But then I talked about that in chat, and then there was some guy that got really angry and he said I was wrong. So I don't know. I have no idea, because I don't know how the compiler works. And I think if it's to the point where I have to learn how the compiler works, I think maybe the system just might not be, maybe I should abandon it and try something else. If I need to go that level, because that level I know I'm not good with. I'm not going to thrive at that level, because I'm not meant for that stuff, you know. I'm not a bachelor degree PhD programmer type dude who just focuses on programming only. So I don't think I would do that well in that fighting that battle, because I'm more of a general trade kind of guy than a specialist. But yeah. Yeah, I'd like to try and find more info though about how that works, because the thing is, because that's the thing, to learn how that works is going to take time, but also it's like you have to decide whether you want to invest the time to do that. That's kind of the conundrum I'm faced with, where it's like, this might not even be worth it. It might just be a little quirk, and it might be completely inconsequential, and packaging the game might be totally fine. It might not affect anything. Also, it might be completely catastrophic, and the only way you can figure that out is if you decide to go in and like spend months researching it or whatever. And it's like, oh, can I afford to do that right now? And it's like, I'm trying to kind of be economical about it. I'm trying to do bits of research, but I'm also trying not to go too overboard. But it's it's just one of those things, because I think if it was anything else, I probably would have just compromised on something that half worked, that wasn't as powerful. Like if it was a cosmetic thing. But this is like a very core system, and hopefully this is the last core system I need to ever touch for this game. But because it is such an essential system for the game content, I feel like I can't really afford to take that many shots. Like there's a certain amount of tech debt that I have to avoid and invest time now to avoid for a system that is this abundant. If it was something like a smaller component that is only used once, like I don't know, like a fan in the environment that's animated, or like a tree shader or something, I probably wouldn't bother, because it isn't that important. But this is like a really important, it's such a core system, and it's just like, it's the last major thing that I need to get working. And then after that, I can just start creating missions easily. But it's just this big hurdle that's stopping me there first. So that's, you know, anyway, that's all the time I got for today, unfortunately. I mean, the thing is, yeah, like I might stream more of this depending on how stuck I get. If I get really stuck, I'm probably just, yeah, I don't think you guys want to see it. You know, it's probably just going to be frustrating. So I don't know. I do get asked about like a stream schedule and stuff a lot. And yeah, the reason I don't have one is because you'll often get things like this that come up that just are really dry. And it's like, man, how the hell do I explain this to someone? So it's, you know, I just wanted to keep you guys up to date without having to make a whole devlog about it and everything. Because this wouldn't make a good devlog. But the idea is, because I do have another devlog planned for the next milestone. And that devlog will touch on the highlights of what I'm going through right now. It'll mention the system and say, I have this system and this is how it works. It was really hard, but I did eventually get it working. And then I'll have all the other stuff that Matt's been doing in there, and I'll have all the fun bits. That's sort of what makes the devlog cut, is all the stuff that's actually cool. But this is, this is kind of like a day in the life of what tends to go on programming wise when there isn't anything else going on. So anyway, so I don't know what you guys are going to take away from this. I know it's probably not, it's not very educational. I don't know, maybe it is, I don't know. I just wanted to, you know, touch base with everyone, show you what's happening, even though it's really obscure and very like specific. But I think that's why a lot of people don't do devlogs, and that's kind of the risk you have when doing devlogs, is that this is not just for me, but everyone's game is going to have something like this happen in it. And you know, it makes it tough when you're doing a devlog, because, you know, a lot of people might look at it and go, oh yeah, this guy's an idiot. You know, he doesn't know what he's doing. I can do it, and then they'll come up with some answer and it's really not like adjusted to what you're doing. I've had that happen a lot. So that's kind of a thing when you're running this is why I would not mention this in a devlog, is because there'll probably be a bunch of people that suggest something that is just beyond the scope of what I'm capable of. And if I say I'm not capable of it, it's like, oh, he's a bad dev. He doesn't know what he's doing. And yeah, I don't. That's kind of the thing with devlogs that you gotta kind of be careful about, because it's, you know, it's a lot of it is just so specific, and that's kind of where. That's the challenge whenever I make a devlog. It's like, this is so obscure and specific. How do I make it fun for people? So that's why I tend to skip over these kinds of things, because it's really, yeah, it's just it's so. This is like my inner. This is like what goes on in my head, like at night all the time. Like this is the stuff that keeps me up at night, and I'd rather not keep anyone else up with it. So I just wanted to touch base. But thanks for being with me. I unfortunately have to go. This was a very short stream. But you guys were a very good rubber duck. I appreciate it. I think I might know what I'm going to try. I'll let you guys know how it goes. I might stream again soon, like in the next few days or next week maybe, just to show you some updates to it. I really want to just hop on and show you it working. That's where I want to get to. I want to get to the point where I can hop on stream or a devlog, and I can open it and go, guys, the system works, and I can show you how to use it. Even though you guys are not going to use those tools, I think you're going to be happy for me that I've made it that way, because you're going to go, oh, wow, Ray's going to be able to make some great content for Project Feline, which is the goal. So that's where I want to get to, but it's just, yeah, I think this is the sort of stuff, I think, when this comes out, I think this is like why a lot of people just quit, because it's just so hard. It's just, yeah. Anyway. Is there someone who can teach good blueprints? I don't know. If you're looking for a beginner thing, my friend Matt Palahay's videos are very good. That kind of got me started. But there is one caveat about YouTube tutorials in general that you should be very, very careful about. And this is one of the reasons I've been struggling so much too. And I'm going to end with this because I think this is so important. I just want to put this out there somewhere. YouTube tutorials, that's how I learnt everything. But there is one problem with them that you are going to come across if you try and take the project seriously that you're doing. And that is that you'll notice that a lot of tutorials are not scalable. They'll show you how to do something, but it's in the most bad way possible. If you want to, there was some tutorial I saw and it was like the wall run. This is back when I was trying to do my own wall run. But the tutorial wall run, it did work, but it was the worst possible way. Like, there was no room for scalability. There was no room to improve and iterate on it. It wasn't self-contained. The guy just opened, the character, the third-person character. He didn't even make his own custom. He just opened the third-person template, went to the class, and then in that, which you're not supposed to put logic in, he starts adding, and then we're going to add a set location node, and then we're going to... And he does the wall run. And you look at it on screen and it's like, oh, well, it looks like a wall run. Yeah, that's great. But what you don't see is that you're going to have to rewrite that later if you want to do anything else with it. And that's true, I found, at least, in my experience. I found that to be the case for a lot of tutorials, just in general. Not just for Unreal, just for in general, for anything. Even with Unity stuff and Unreal stuff. There's always that thing where... it'll show you how to do it in the MVP, minimum viable way. But if you're going to do the project long term, you will learn that you cannot afford to do it in the minimum viable way. You have to do it better than minimum, because the game will demand that of you if you're going to do anything to it. if you're just doing for a game jam, it's totally fine. But if you're serious, like if you have to spend years on the game and there's going to be other systems interacting with it, then that way is not going to work. Like, you're going to have to redo it. That's why my wall run took so long, is because I started from a tutorial and then I have to completely figure out my own way of doing it, because the way in the tutorial was just not going to work for all the stuff I was doing. So that kind of stuff, not just everywhere, happens all the time for me. So that's the risk that you tend to run, I find, with following tutorials. That's just something to keep in mind. I think it's not to say that they're bad. You should probably watch a tutorial to get the hang of something, but you should, what I try to do is I'll follow the tutorial, and then afterwards I'll go, okay, I'm going to do this again, but I'm going to change and do it my way now, and figure out a way to compartmentalize all the logic off into different areas so that it's like scalable. That's the way. I don't know if that's what you're supposed to do. Like, I don't know if there's a better way to do that, but that's what my brain will intuitively think to do, because it just feels like it's the right thing. Because later you see the consequences of that, and then I'm like, wow, I'm glad I compartmentalized that like a year ago now, because now this is coming in handy. So yeah, that kind of stuff happens. For me, at least, it happened a lot. And that's why I've kind of stopped following YouTube tutorials now, mostly, because I'm at the stage where I'm so deep that most tutorials are just too general and they won't apply to the specifics of what I'm doing. So that's something that happens. It kind of sucks. But that's just something to keep in mind. But yeah, I think the reason that happens is because I think anyone can make a tutorial. And I think that's kind of a good thing and a bad thing, because on the one hand, I think Unity is a great example, because I think a lot of people prefer Unity because there's more tutorials about it, which is a good thing. But a lot of the people making those tutorials are just people, like, they don't necessarily have to have a background, you know? Like, I actually made a tutorial once for some Unity thing, and this was like 8 years ago, before I had actually made a game. And you can kind of see the problem there, right? It's like, you're going to listen to this guy that has not actually had to use this thing in a production environment, and he's going to teach you how to do it. There's going to be things that someone who hasn't been through that environment is just not going to pick up on. And I think that's part responsible why so many of these tutorials are not scalable, because they're made by people that don't understand why scalability is important. And even if they do, for a tutorial, it's probably just not worth to even go there, because the scalability will depend so much on the project you're doing. So the most general and broad way is usually just the minimum way, which is great for prototyping, but not great for the final product. And that's kind of the weird situation with tutorials that I've observed, is that tends to happen a lot. And I guess there's not really much you can do about it. You just kind of have to figure it out, I guess. But yeah, that's just something to keep in mind. Always kind of look at tutorials with a bit of skepticism and say, you know, this person making the tutorial, is he just some like 15-year-old that just makes tutorials in his spare time? Or is this guy actually been at a studio before and knows how these systems should work? And I think for the majority, you know, most people that are making tutorials like what I was doing them, for instance, even all of my videos, even, like, they're all coming from the experience of me, who has not really worked in a lot of studios before. So there's probably heaps I'm getting wrong, and I'm aware of that. But that's why I tend not to do tutorials that much, because I know that I'm probably not worth listening to in that department. Maybe after the game comes out and it's like, okay, now I can kind of get why you should program something like this or whatever. Maybe then, but yeah, at the moment, I try to stay away, because I get a lot of asks. So like, can you do tutorial on this? And it's like, I could, but someone else could probably do it better than me. That's like actually done, like, shipped a game, at least one game. Because when you do ship one game, because I've released free games before, and I know people that have actually shipped games, and I've paid very close attention to those people. And when you ship, their priorities and attitude completely change from before, and that's why I think shipping's so important. Anyway, that's kind of what I just wanted to end with there on that topic. But anyway, yeah, I do have to get going though. Thanks so much for sticking around. Appreciate you guys being my rubber duck. That's what's happening this few weeks in Project Feline. I hope that, I don't know. I hope that I'm not dead, guys, okay? I'm not dead. That's what this was all about. But thanks for coming, I appreciate it. Talking about programming stuff. This has kind of just been my life for the last 2 weeks. And it'll probably continue to be my life for the next few weeks until I fix this. But I will fix it. It will get done eventually, somehow. And I'll let you guys know when. But thanks so much. I will catch you guys later when I've got more stuff to show. But yeah, that's going to be it for now, guys. Thanks so much.